Hi, welcome to this video, and we're looking at the secret to Africa's true freedom. Many people will agree that though Africa may be free directly or physically from oppression and chains, economically and indirectly in several other ways, it's still far from being free. So the question is, how can this beautiful and amazing continent achieve the freedom that we so desire, that it can become economically free and also boast of a greatness of its own, that its own citizens will be proud of where they are coming from and won't have a need to go out in search of greener pastures, for brain drain, for talent drain, all in the quest for better opportunities. Believe me, there is no protest or strike action or revolution or even change in government that can actually give Africa the freedom that it so desires. The reason is simply because of the nature of freedom itself. The problem is we confuse deliverance with freedom. Protests, strike actions, revolutions, and rallies and marches, all those contribute for deliverance and not freedom. And that's why we have the great African heroes that brought about a fight that gave us deliverance, like the Nelson Mandelas, the Kwame Nkrumah, the John Go Funchers, the Patrice Lumumbas, and all these people did a great fight in the form of revolution, in the form of strike, in the form of protests, and these brought about deliverance from the oppressor. But how does Africa achieve freedom? Well, if you don't know the difference between deliverance and freedom, then quickly let me borrow the definition of the great Dr. Miles Monroe, and he says deliverance is the removal of the chains from your hands and your necks, but freedom is the removal of those chains from your mind, because the chains have been removed by the great deliverers that I just listed. But what about the chains that are still in our minds? How do we remove those chains? The answer is a simple sentence. The price of freedom is responsibility. I'm going to take that again. The price of freedom is responsibility. So Africa can never see the freedom it so desires until we are ready to pay the price of responsibility. Now, what is responsibility, you may ask? Well, I'll just share with you the definition and illustration that I give to my students. And this is an exercise I borrowed from the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. It's simple. What is responsibility? I show up in class, and when I ask the question, what is responsibility, and no one is able to give us a concrete definition, I simply reach out to my pocket and pull out a banknote. And I ask the students two key questions. Of course, after getting them to identify the banknote. And the first question I always ask them is, who likes this? Who likes the banknote? And you have several hands up, and everyone is saying they like the banknote. But the key is in the second question. And when I ask the second question, who wants this banknote? That's where it gets interesting. Many people shout, I want the banknote. Some say, give it to me. Some say, I want it badly. I deserve it. I'm the best in the class. But I just stand there and hold that banknote, and I don't say another word. Usually this could go on for a few seconds or even up to a minute, depending on how sharp they can get the lesson. And sooner or later, when it dawns on one of the students, they'll rush up to the front of the class and seize the banknote from my hand. If you take a careful look at that illustration, then you understand what it means. Responsibility, the price to freedom. If you consider freedom as those students owning that money, then they all wanted the freedom, and they all expressed a desire and a want for that freedom. But oftentimes, only one is ready and willing and thinks of taking responsibility so that they can have the freedom they want. So, how can Africa achieve freedom? Simply by taking responsibility. All the things we desire, all the things we keep saying the government should do, the government shouldn't do. No, every single African needs to rise up and stop complaining and stop playing the blame game and decide, in my own capacity, in my own corner, I'm going to take responsibility to see the changes that I want to see. But instead of taking responsibility, what do we see? We see Africans that are looking up to other countries to come and build their nations, build them roads, and bring them development. And of course, all these things come at a very huge price. They may build you a road, but they will control that road perhaps for the next 99 years. And you find yourself a tenant in your own country. Why? Because you didn't take responsibility to build that road, to raise those buildings, and to bring that development. So, if you're an African, I'm going to ask you, apart from complaining, apart from pointing fingers at the government, what have you done? What responsibility are you taking? Remember, no protest, no revolution can bring freedom. And that's why over and over, all the coup d'etats and the change of governments and the protests and revolutions have done nothing more than just change the faces of the people that continue to perpetuate the same things that we don't desire. The protests were for deliverance, and deliverance has already been accomplished. Now, are we going to pay the price to get to freedom? Deliverance cost many of our fathers their lives. I don't think freedom really demands a sacrifice of life. You just have to take responsibility. You just have to look within and start bringing out the potentials and the capacities and abilities that are in us. And that's simply it. Responsibility, in short, is responding to your ability. So there is no doubt whether we have the abilities or not. It's no secret that many African countries are still controlled economically for the most part by their former colonial masters. But then again, what's the solution to that? It's not just as simple as chasing these colonial masters away, or we think if we had some leader who will sever the ties from these people. The truth is, if we use a strike force, a protest to drive these colonial masters, in less than a year, we'll be the same people begging them to come and take total control again. Because once you don't take responsibility, the tendency is by default you will rely on others to take responsibility for you. If we don't take responsibility to design our own academic curriculum based on the kind of minds we want our children to develop after spending time in school, the natural tendency would be to adopt the curriculum of another man who has taken responsibility to design it for his children. If we don't take responsibility to own our own lands, to farm our own crops, to package our own crops, to export our own crops, and make sure that we have enough produce in the market, the natural default tendency would be to depend on another person who has taken responsibility to export those products to us so we can import them and continue sending out finances that we so need to develop the place. So I ask you again, what's the price of freedom? Responsibility. What's the price of freedom? I can't get you. What's the price of freedom? Responsibility. So I challenge you, start taking responsibility today. First, for your life personally, for your family, for your community, and for your nation. Things won't change themselves. No complaining, no strike will change anything. We need to rise, get out there, and start releasing the abilities and potentials that we have within to build, to develop, and create everything that we'll need so we don't have to depend on anyone again. But this is not to incite a difference or a controversy. If we are independent, it doesn't mean we don't need people. We always need one another, whether as individuals or as a nation. But if we are independent, then we can truly contribute to other nations and help other communities instead of always being the ones to receive help and to be the victim. So that's our time in this video. I'd like to know what you think about this topic. What do you think is the secret to Africa's true freedom? Please drop your answer in the comments below. And please, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps in pushing the video up the algorithm. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I can't go out without saying a big shout out to our Patreons, Chauncey Allen, Manny Rivera, and to all our family of patrons. Thank you so much for your support. You really help us do what we are doing. If you'd like to support this channel, please check the link to our Patreon page in the video description below. I'm Bodas Djoumessi. Thank you so much for watching and see you in our next video.